Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another Wealth Coffee Chat. Hope you've all been awesome and well. Thanks, Alison. Yep. Back from Japan. Had a good time. Saw a few things, which was super cool. Interesting to see how a city of 37 million people live, and pretty amazingly, pretty quietly and pretty organised. Yeah, there you go. Pretty amazing place. Very clean and, well worth visiting. Hey, Tim. Good to see you, Tim. Good to see you, Alison, Sonia, Alexis, and fantastic Facebook user. Welcome to another Wealth Coffee Chat, folks. Hope you didn't miss me too much. Andy and Sam filled in for me while I was away. Did they do an all right job? Those two always bring some value to fabulous minds, to amazing thinkers, to great investors. Hopefully you learnt a thing or two from those two. I don't think too much went on while I was away, which is good. It's always the same, but is always changing. But today, I thought we might talk about something that's popped up of recent times. Did anyone notice something the Brisbane City Council has just done? Well, I'll talk about this one tomorrow. The old Queenslanders talking about a rent cap. That rent cap is actually rubbish. It was a conversation of changing the time frame of changing 6 months to 12 months. Anyway, there you go. But what happened just recently? Has anyone been keeping an eye on any of the information about the zoning changes in Brisbane? Did anyone put in the chat if you know what happened or what recently may have happened up in the surrounding Brisbane suburbs? So not the CBD, but surrounding the CBD. What is proposed for one of our favourite suburbs, South Brisbane, and others? Does anyone know? No one knows. Maybe everyone's looking online, going, "Quick, let's have a quick look." But I'll show you. Good morning, Brendan. Higher density, yes, Tim. Well, higher density, but also the Brisbane City Council now is proposing that a new building height, folks, for South Bank and a few areas around Brisbane, close to the CBD, are now allowing building heights to be up to 274 meters. That's a pretty high building, huh? Pretty high building. Well, the same building height as the CBD in Brisbane. And what will that do? What will that do for the Brisbane City Council? Well, they have recognised they've got to challenge a problem with enough properties in Brisbane, and they have a new, there it is there, a new Brisbane Sustainable Growth Strategy to add another 10,000 dwellings to the market. Yep, and we'll see if that occurs. There's still a lot to do when it comes to actually adding a dwelling to a market. However, I wanted to talk about what that might do to values and how these things, how zoning or rezoning actually creates value in our real estate. So there you go. It's literally, it's almost like doubling the height, folks, which is kind of cool. And for those owners of real estate there, or those developers, well, that might make the site a little bit more sustainable or doable when it comes to developing those properties. So let's talk about what that looks like today. I'm going to talk about the zoning and the value that comes with zoning properties. So let's talk when it comes to what really creates value in the world of real estate. Let's whack that in there. So what really creates value when it comes to the world of real estate, team? For us as property investors, we always talk about, supply and demand. We talk about, quality. We talk about, lifestyle features, the ability to be close to infrastructure and amenities and all sorts of stuff. We talk about the distance from the CBD, infrastructure, et cetera, right? So these are the things we normally talk about when it comes to real estate, but there's an underlying thing from all of these drivers when it comes to growth, when it comes to real estate, when it comes to underlying demand and market growth that underpins right from the beginning a piece of real estate. Yeah, Brendan, that is for sure. And that is one of the downsides. That is one of the downsides of this type of thing. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So what's the foundational piece that holds these pieces up when it comes to their value, their drivers in the marketplace? And that is the zoning of a piece of real estate. And what does that mean? Well, let's talk about that. Zoning is a classification, some letters on a map, and I'll show you in a second, that the council deems of what you can do on a piece of said land. Okay, so let me show you. Oh, actually, let's go back to this. Now, stick with me here this morning because I'm going to show you a couple of little things. So we're talking about, okay, how does the zoning work? So let's talk about what a map might look like, and we work out some of the value of a piece of land, right? So this is what a zoning map looks like. This is Brisbane City. If I turn that off, you can see Brisbane City here. This is South Bank over here. You can see where the cursor is, the river, etc. Now, what they're talking about is rezoning or allowing certain heights on over here and certain suburbs. Okay, so and this hasn't been passed yet, so the new color scheme hasn't been put in. But you can see they have overlong the city. Now, for every single piece of real estate in the city, we can find out what the zoning is, the density, et cetera, et cetera. So how does it work? All right, zoning. Let's cut back to this little map here. So let's talk about what zoning means. Right. So let's say we have a piece of land and we're just going to call it 1,000 square meters. Okay. Now, there's a couple of dimensions when it comes to valuing this 1,000 square meters. So regular everyday property, there are two dimensions we can cover this land in. All right. So tell me in the chat, which is the two dimensions we can build on this land? And it's probably asking a bit of a cryptic question. But anyway, put it in the chat. The two dimensions of adding value to this land, what Sam calls the highest and best use. Okay, best use. Okay, highest and best use. Now, how do we work that out? Well, all maps in the city allow you to have a certain coverage. So 1,000 square meters, you can have a building envelope cover the land to a certain amount. So let's say, for example, you can have 50% coverage with a building. Let's say just a simple housing block of land. Let's just use that. 50% coverage. You've got to have 50% garden space. And how many stories can you go up on this land? You can go up 2 stories. Okay? Stories. So if you think about it, 1,000 square meters of land, 50% coverage, all I can do is build a 2-story house. Okay? Let's talk about that 1,000 square meters of land, and we get a zoning. This is kind of like just a residential zoning, like a normal residential zoning. Now, let's change the zoning to that land to multi-density, all right? And we'll talk about this. Residential piece of land, what's the value of that? A piece of dirt right now, if you try and buy a piece of land of 1,000 square meters up in Brisbane, what's that going to set you back? What's that going to set you back, folks? Do you know? It's probably 800K. 800K right now as we go, right? So multi-density, same piece of land, different zoning. You can go, all right, instead of one dwelling by 2 stories, you can now have multiple dwellings, whatever that density is. There's certain rules around that. But again, it might have 70% coverage. So 70% coverage. And now it might have let's call it a 3-story limit, 3 stories. So now you can go, all right, well, what can I cover there? And you can now turn that into multiple. So let's say you've got 8 on the bottom, 3 stories. You can go from 1 dwelling to 24 dwellings. All right. 1 dwelling to 24 dwellings. Right. Now, will this land value be the same value as 800K because one piece, right? The answer is no. On average, at the moment, certainly up in Brisbane, what's called a box or a townhouse site, right? A townhouse. This is let's say call that townhouses or apartments, is worth between $100,000 and $150,000 a dwelling box, right? So now that's worth $2.4 million. Same piece of land, right? Same piece of land, just with different zoning, is worth now $2.4 million. All right. 800K, 2.4, not too bad. Now, there's quite a lot of areas that get rezoned for medium density all the time because cities are expanding. And this is a classic example of that happening right now in Brisbane. Right. Same 1,000 square meters, team. Now we have, check this out, same 1,000 square meters, 100% coverage, 100% coverage. And how many stories? 50 stories, right? So let's just have a guess at a rough guess of 50 stories, 100% coverage. Let's call it 8. 8 apartments per 8 times 50. 8 times 50. How many apartments could you put on there? 400. Same bit of land, team, same bit of land. But now you can go 50 stories up in the sky, 100% land coverage. And if you can have enough car parks and all sorts of stuff, like there's plenty of other mathematics in here, right? Now, if you go, right, that's worth $100,000 a box. What's that worth now? What is it worth? Tim's guessing 20 million. Exactly, Tim. 40 million bucks. Same piece of land with a different zoning, team. Same piece of land, 800 to 2.4 to $40 million. $40 million. Right. So that's the power of zoning. That's the power of having a piece of land that, now there's plenty of other things that you've got to check. You've got to check overlays and flood and dirt and, stability and all sorts of stuff. But that's the rough mathematics, right? That's the rough mathematics, team, when it comes to this stuff. And if you look in here, you go, oh, okay, well, what does it look like? How does it work when it comes to these maps? Well, this is this is kind of cool. You can drill into certain zones. Let's go in here. And you can see, can you see this down here? High density residential up to 15 stories, right? So if you could buy any of the, properties in and around this area, and I know that Aria's got one of these properties in here somewhere. Actually, I think it's just here. This one right here. Is it that one? Anyway, somewhere there. No, it's over this side. Over here, they're doing a property there right now called Trellis. Okay, so if we were to look for the things that are going to go from 15 stories to, let's say, 30 stories in Brisbane, this is where we might look. We might look at the red zoning, the red areas, and try and buy all of these properties, any property in here that's developable in the red zones. All right. Or wherever else in Brisbane they're going to do that. Here we go. Community facilities, etc. Wonder what these ones are here. So anyway, hopefully that made sense. Little bit of a slower warm up for me. Just back off holidays, so not fully kicked into gear just yet. Arrived back yesterday, but I thought this was interesting. The idea that the zoning has changed. Now, what's that going to do? Is it going to benefit that area? Yeah, I think it will. I don't think it's going to be 10,000 apartments built all at one time. That's not possible. It wouldn't even be possible right now in Australia. We don't have the people nor the supply to do that. But will it help? It may. It may help medium to long term. It's not going to help short term when it comes to those sorts of things. What are a few of the things we got to look out for if there is a builder, a developer or two that come in and build some very substandard stuff, then yeah, we've got to keep an eye on that for sure. But for the moment, I don't think that's going to happen because it's still going to need quite an investment to build those properties, even if they were trying to land them as cheaply as possible. It's still going to be, 6, 7, 800,000. Tim, yes. Well, and isn't that interesting? When you own property in an area that has the capacity or the capacity or the location that could be rezoned in the future, that's not a bad little upside plan as well. You can't sort of hang around waiting for it forever and a day, obviously, but it's not a bad little benefit if you can make it work. There you go. And yeah, Tim, there is quite a large social housing plan. Unfortunately, the government, I think, is going about the wrong way, but I'll talk about that in coming days, actually. And we can have a look at some of the stats about what's going on with the government's plan for that. Again, it's not going to affect us as property investors because we're buying quality things that owner occupiers desire in the future. And social housing is not going to be desired by a owner occupier in the future who would be interested in either buying in or buying your property or properties around yours, which will, use that demand to create value for us as we go along. Anyway, folks, there you go. Wealth Coffee Chat done and dusted for today. Let's put that back in the mix. There you go. Zoning. If your property that you own, a bit of dirt that you own, can put more bits of real estate on it, it's worth more, which makes sense, right? Which makes sense. Ultimately, when you have done the highest and best use of a piece of dirt that you have, maximized its land coverage, its height coverage, its number of bedrooms, its facilities, its amenities of itself, once it's maximized highest and best use, well, what happens then? Well, hopefully you've purchased that in the right area, close to the infrastructure and the demand that's going to continue into the future. And your property will grow in value because of market forces on your bit of real estate. There you go, folks. Anyway, done and dusted. Warming back up to the old Wealth Coffee Chats. You guys have an awesome day. That's it from me. Over and out. Join me tomorrow. Oh, yeah, I've got to remember to say that. Join me tomorrow for another Wealth Coffee Chat. There you go. 8:10 tomorrow. I'm pretty sure I'll be around tomorrow. I will be traveling down to Sydney as well, but we'll have a chat for sure. Anyway, folks, you guys be awesome, be well, and join me tomorrow for another one. Adios.